Birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, whatever the occasion, it just got a little more personal with meaningful photo gifts from Shutterfly. Add a silly photo to a gold-rimmed mug for your bestie. Put your sweet puppy on a cozy fleece blanket for your teen. Gift your husband a desktop plaque featuring all the kids. Enjoy 40% off orders over $29 with code POD40 at Shutterfly.com and make something that means something.
This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, listeners and friends. It is Thursday afternoon, and we're going to do an extra episode because I did two essentially just rambling bonus episodes this week about pretty much nothing. Well, I didn't think they were about nothing, but I did get a email, I guess today. It must have been today, or this week at the very least. Let's see. This is a great start, huh? Just making you guys wait. Email. Oh yeah, so yesterday, I guess, I got this email. I'm going to read it to you. And it, I was going to do an actual true crime episode this week anyways. And then last night I could not sleep. I went to sleep at like 8 and got up at, 2:00 in the morning and could not fall back to sleep. So I was reading the news. Somehow I came across some interesting true crime stories that caught my attention at 3:00 in the morning. And one of them is not in the Southwest. One of them that we're going to talk about today is partially in the Southwest. But the other one, I've never heard of either of them. And I was like so intrigued by both. So, but then I got this email today, and this just gave me extra reason to do, to get a true crime episode out this week, which again, there's a couple thousand people listening. So not a huge amount, but not nobody. And so I recognize that not everyone feels the same way that this woman does, Mary in Montana, who wrote to me. And as far as emails go, it's actually, I've gotten some really rude emails. People either not liking me, not liking Jenna, not liking the bonus. I mean, people have a problem with everything, and that's fine. That's why there's 80 billion podcasts in the world. If you don't like my voice, or you don't like my rambling, or you don't like how much I talk about myself or how I tell a story, then there are so many other podcasts that you can listen to. That's completely acceptable. I still say to myself what Jenna always said, like, we're not for everybody. Not everybody's going to like us. And the best I can do is just kind of be honest and be myself and continue to try and improve this podcast, while also recognizing that as it is right now, it's a hobby. And so it doesn't always come first and foremost. I wish it did. I wish it could, but we're not there yet. So, wow, I feel like I really just gave a lot of too much context for this email. It's really not that big of a deal, but I'm going to read it. So it says, listener in Montana here. I've enjoyed the true crime stories on Death by Southwest for almost a year. I really appreciated Jenna's presence to balance out the energy. When Mark started riding shotgun, I never listened. Together, you two just jammered endlessly. Then Jenna disappeared. Bummer. Now I'm afraid your solo work has started to go beyond the pale as far as rambling goes, and not very interesting stuff. Looking like I'm signing off after reading that this week's episode is another blah, blah, blah about you. I don't mean to be rude, but it's hard to imagine that an intelligent person such as you, who already has a therapist, would go on in this way. it might be time to change the podcast title to something far more indicative than the current misleading title. And perhaps people enjoy the current trend of more self-talk, less true crime. I'm just not one of them. Best of luck, Mary in Montana. And that is honestly, as far as someone not liking the podcast and taking the time to let me know that is a really respectful, kind maybe is not the word, respectful and straightforward and not offensive email. And Mary, who I guess is probably not listening, is totally correct. I do tend to yammer on about myself or thoughts in my head or what's going on in my life, because if I'm not telling a true crime story and I'm just podcasting alone, I'm not sure what else I guess I could talk about like the meaning of life or like what happens after we die. I mean, like, unless I'm going to be talking about a specific topic, which I would love if you guys were like, we'd like to hear you talk about this, or could you research and tell us more about this? Like, or questions that you have for me, or you want to tell me something about your life. Like I said on yesterday or the day before's episode, send me some voice messages. I'll play them on the podcast and share people who have more interesting lives than mine, like I did with our friend in Belgium. So, and maybe that's something that I need to do, like think about a little bit more. And I'm completely open to suggestions. But yeah, I guess it is a little self-involved and I'm not going to apologize for that because you don't have to listen. And I don't mean that to sound rude, but truthfully, like, I'm doing this because I enjoy doing it. And yes, it did start out as a job, and we were very diligent about the bonus episodes being about the actual true crime episode. Everything was, linked back to true crime. And as time went on and life went on, that has obviously changed a little bit. I am trying to still stick with one true crime episode a week. I wish that I could say my life is all about true crime and I'm just consumed by it constantly, but it's not. I enjoy it and I enjoy telling stories, but I would probably just as much enjoy telling stories about history or reading a fictional story or, I enjoy true crime, but I'm not, I couldn't call myself like obsessed with true crime. Now I do love watching crime movies. Anyways, not going down that road. So I'm trying, so I am kind of coming around more to the idea that, look, if there's a day where I'm not feeling great and I have some work that actually pays me money to do, and that takes up more time and I'm not able to put out a true crime episode and all I can do is kind of sit down and just jabber into the microphone, I'm okay with that. Like, that's fine with me. And if it's not fine with, you, the general you, then I completely understand that. I don't necessarily want to listen to somebody jammering on about Costco and their animals either, but I'm not listening to that. I'm the one talking about it. So, I totally get it. And she's right. It is a bit of a misleading title. But I'm not ready to change this. I don't want to change the title. I like the title and I do like doing true crime, but I like doing other things too. So, that's kind of where we're at. And for people who have been here since the beginning, you've witnessed the ups and downs and all arounds of this. And who knows, maybe Jackie will start doing it with me and we'll do more true crime. Maybe, I don't know. I'm kind of just flying by the seat of my pants with this and hoping that there is at least someone or a few someones who gain something from this, whether it be from the true crime or from the bonus episodes or from the blabbing, rambling episodes, that it is helping or making someone else feel good or happy or less lonely, whatever. And then with the true crime, that I'm hoping that it's, yes, entertaining, but also cautionary tales and the unsolved ones, just the more it can be out there, you never know. So anyways, I do appreciate the email, Mary. I think that my skin has thickened and I'm very much open to, I don't know if I'm like dying to get negative feedback, but yeah, I'll take any feedback. I appreciate the honesty and that's it. Yeah. So thank you. And then this text there's no name on it, but from a 561 area code, wanted to know my thoughts on the Menendez brother drama, which I kind of started to talk about the other day, but I didn't really know what I was talking about. So I did do some more research on that, since then. And I thought I had something pulled up with some information, but I guess not. My thoughts on that are very quick and short. They've been in prison for 30 or 34 years. New evidence apparently has come to light about the sexual abuse from their dad. And if any of the abuse shown in the documentaries and or like dramatized versions of this story that I've seen, I think I'm for them getting out. I think, which may be an unpopular opinion, which would be my first example of an unpopular opinion, which Micah asked me like months ago. They were young. They were, if we're to believe that they were abused, sounds like they were very badly abused. horrifically. And while that's, of course, like killing your parents or killing anyone is not the answer, obviously, 34 years in prison. Apparently they've had a very, their behavior has been pretty pristine for those 34 years. I think time changes a lot of things, and 34 years is a really long time. So yeah, I think that if this new evidence that does confirm the abuse and their prison record has been pretty spotless, in any other situation, I think I'd say no, but I don't know, something about this one. Yeah, I'm open to that. Not that it matters what I think. And some text from Human GPS said, seeing an animal's eye reflection at night is called eye shine, which I did not know. So thank you for that. And he also said he's been listening to Kill List because I did a read for it. I don't even remember. I guess I must have read an ad for it. I don't even recall that, but that's probably why I had it saved in my podcast app and then started listening to it a few weeks ago. And he concurs that it is very interesting. He thought it might be fake, but he started looking up some of the people and found that it's been true. So I still recommend that. And that's about it. I had therapy today, as I must mention that a lot because Mary mentioned that I have a therapist. So I do appreciate she called me intelligent. I don't know. What do you talk about? Like, I don't know. I guess I need to wrap my brain around this a little bit more as to, don't get me wrong. I never assumed that Costco trips and betting and the dogs was like riveting content, but I do get messages from people who say that they like hearing, they like it. They're comforted by it. They put it on kind of as background noise. When I'm just kind of talking on and on about my day or my life or whatever, and they enjoy it. So if there's an instance like this week where I didn't think I was going to have time to put out a true crime episode, because that takes obviously a lot more time than just sitting down and blabbing into the microphone. So if I'm not going to have time to do that, then but I do have time to sit down for a quick, 30, 40 minutes and just chit chat. I feel like that's better than nothing. I don't know why. I guess this email bothered me more than I thought it did because I'm now returning to it again. So I'm going to stop and say that I know I'm not for everyone. I wish I was. I think I wish I was. But I'm not, and I'm working on accepting that. So anyways, to the people who have been supportive of the ups and downs, please know that I do very much appreciate you. And for the Marys out there, I appreciate you too. I like the honesty. I've said that already. So here we go. Moving on. So today, this is a story that I'm surprised I haven't heard because it has been covered on a fair amount of true crime podcasts. So I apologize if this is one you've heard before. Often this story is referred to as the Amazon review killer. I think that's a little misleading. And I'm going to not tell you why yet. I'm going to wait. So we are going to, I know that these are, I think we got a comment sometime in the past where where someone said like, you shouldn't focus on the murderer because that's bringing a spotlight to them and like shining a light on them and giving them more exposure. You should be focusing on the victims. And then, the killer's obviously part of the story, but not the focus. And I agree. I'm not disputing that. Sometimes that's not a possibility with these stories because there just is more information on the killer, or the focus is kind of on the killer and not as much on the victims. And this is one of those stories. So if that is something that bothers you, there is your warning. There are also, I realize I need to start saying this more, there are also mentions of sexual assault and rape in this episode. So we are going to be talking about Todd Kohlhepp. He was born Todd Christopher Sampsell on March 7th, 1971 in Florida. And he moved around a lot as a kid. He grew up mainly in South Carolina and Georgia. His parents divorced when he was pretty young, and his mother got custody of him and remarried soon after that divorce, which was unpleasant for Todd because he did not get along with his stepfather and regularly expressed a desire to go live with his biological father, even though they didn't really know each other. They hadn't seen each other in about 8 years. And so Todd expressed this desire through acting out, mostly shredding I read that he would shred his clothes. He would break mirrors in his room, kind of destroy his bedroom. And from a pretty young age, he was known for having aggressive behavior. As young as preschool, he would act out violently and damage other children's belongings. By the time he was 9, he was already seeing a counselor. He was described as explosive and preoccupied with sexual content at 9 years old. In 1980, he was referred to the Behavior Evaluation Center at the Georgia Mental Health Institute because of his mother's inability to enforce limits on his behavior problems at school. This is, again, about when he is 8 or 9 years old. He also displayed cruelty to animals, shooting dogs with BB guns. He killed a goldfish using Clorox bleach. He also spent a few months in a psychiatric hospital due to these ongoing issues, fitting in with other children, getting along at school, things like that. In 1983, Todd's mom and stepfather separated, and Todd finally was able to go live with his biological father in Arizona, up in the Tempe, Phoenix area. He adopted his father's last name, Kohlhepp. He apparently worked some local jobs while he was living there, and his father also helped cultivate an interest in weapons. Specifically teaching Todd how to blow things up and make bombs. The relationship, though it seemed pretty promising and Todd was very happy to be there at first, eventually broke down over time because his biological father was actually pretty absent. He had a bunch of different girlfriends. Todd was asked about this once and he said he's 30 girlfriends. I'm guessing probably not 30, but seemed to have a handful of different girlfriends that he would regularly just kind of go off with and leave Todd and be gone for several days at a time. Todd expressed a desire to return back to his mother, but she apparently didn't want him. She said, "I don't want you to come live with me." I'm guessing she maybe didn't say it in those exact words, but that was the overall message. I also read there are various accounts of potential abuse that he suffered by a grandparent, by his biological father. I'm not able to officially confirm that. So on November 25th, 1986, Todd was 15 years old, and he kidnapped a 14-year-old girl named Christy Granado in Tempe, Arizona. He took a .22 caliber revolver that was his dad's, but his dad was, again, not around much, so easy to take his dad's gun. And he went over to her house, apparently told her he wanted to make out with her. She didn't want to, and so he took out the gun and threatened her with the gun to get her back to his home, and brought her into his home, tied her up, duct taped her mouth shut, and raped her. Afterwards, apparently he walked her home and told her that he would kill her entire family if she told anyone about what had happened. I don't know exactly how he was caught for this, but he was, and admitted to it. And when a probation officer questioned him about the crime, he said he wasn't sure why he raped the girl, but it could have been an act of rebellion because his dad was out of town. He didn't like when his dad went out of town. He was also upset with Christy, the victim, because she had a crush on some of his friends, but not him. She told him she only wanted to be friends with him. So he really showed her. That was facetious, sarcastic. Sorry, that was inappropriate, probably. He was charged with kidnapping, sexual assault, and committing a dangerous crime against children. He was evaluated, had multiple psychological evaluations around this time. And during one of them, he described his attitude towards himself as negative. He said that he repeatedly asked himself, "Why do I do things like this?" He saw himself as a bad person, and said that he feels badly because he feels that he can hurt people easily. They diagnosed him from one of these evaluations with borderline personality disorder. They also noted that his IQ was above average at 118. And so I have some of the actual psych evals, two different ones. So this one is from October 16th, 1987 in Phoenix General Medical Center. He was age 16. Oh, this is a write-up of it. So he was age 16 at the time. He was already in jail. So he was, for this rape, sorry, jumping around a little bit, for sorry guys. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison, and he was registered as a sex offender. The judge noted, I'll get back to the evaluations in a second, but the judge noted that Todd was academically advanced, but the judge described him, just from his courtroom observations, as behaviorally and emotionally dangerous. The judge said that he doubted that Todd would have the ability to be rehabilitated. His probation officer echoed similar concerns, describing Todd as someone who felt that the world owed him something. And even his own attorney commented that even though he was representing him, he did feel that Todd would continue to be a threat in the future. In a much later interview, he said Todd was a very troubled, very vicious kid. He had some very, very, very serious issues. He was off the edge. He did take responsibility for what he did, and he didn't qualify for the state hospital because he didn't show all the symptoms of being a complete wacko. That's a direct quote. So he did plead guilty, sentenced to 15 years, and he was given several psych evaluations. So this one must have been at some point, I don't know if this was before or after he was sentenced, but it was given to him at the Madison Street Jail at the request of his attorney. And, it shows that his intellect is above average, even near the superior range. He has a high level of antisocial personality functioning, and that he is not, so this is a report that this reviewer, there's two reports. The initial one that was done in 86. And so this is a recap. The one that I'm reading from is the one that was done in 87. And they first recap the one done earlier. So in the one done earlier, they say the psychological testing indicated it has a high level of antisocial personality functioning, that he is not psychotic, although he is an individual with severe underlying emotional issues, which could result in emotional deterioration in the future or continued aggressive behavior towards others in the future. Projective testing indicated severe underlying emotional issues, while subjective testing indicated an individual with pronounced signs of family discord and signs of issues pertaining to having a lackadaisical, unmotivated attitude towards life, and specifically taking responsibility for himself. He is seen as distrustful of others, abrupt, self-centered, and naive about how his behavior affects others. He's also seen as alienated and using primitive defense mechanisms at a social level, which includes projection as well as massive denial. There are also ego inflation defense mechanisms in order to bolster his feelings of low self-esteem and inadequacy. Goes on for a bit longer. So that's the first one that was given. And then in this report that was in 1987, when he was examined, he presented his problem as, and this is a direct quote, "I raped a girl and got caught." He stated that at the time he was enraged at his father and did it to get back at him. He went on to describe the event as a form of retaliation and rebellion. Afterwards, he stated he wishes he hadn't done it and feels upset and ashamed. He also stated that he wouldn't do it again. The girl he raped, he described as a neighborhood friend, but they did not have a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. At the time the rape occurred, his father had been gone for 3 days with one of his girlfriends. He also talked about the fact that he enjoys guns and was fooling around with one of them when it popped into his head that he could use the gun to rape the victim. He thought that he would get away with it, he said. And let's see, it goes on to just describe this. He admits to occasional alcohol use when his father is away, 1 or 2 glasses of Coke with Jack Daniels. He doesn't report any type of compulsive drinking, denies any drug abuse. He thinks his paternal grandmother was an alcoholic. Past psychiatric history is reported by the patient as having been present since the age of 10. He says that he doesn't know why he was treated when he was in Georgia, or why he had to spend 3.5 months in inpatient psychiatric facility. So, sorry guys, it's impossible to highlight this or to cut pieces of it out. So I just have to remember where the good, quote unquote, good parts are. He talked about hating his father, and after being with his father for a while, then he said that he saw his mother as a really good person. He says he describes himself as a poor student, but enjoys reading and feels that he could build anything if given a blueprint. He sees no reason to go to school, and he didn't care about school. He likes knives and switchblades and does have thoughts of hurting people, stabbing, and shooting them. He states that he didn't want to do it. "My dad taught me this. He has machetes and guns." That was a direct quote. So the mental status, this This is the mental status examination for a 16-year-old Caucasian male who looks average for his age. He is slightly overweight. His attitude towards the interview was friendly and cooperative. He answered questions articulately, coherently, and relevantly. There was no evidence of a formal thinking process disorder. There were no loose associations or flights of ideas. He self-rates his mood as never having been happy for any sustained period of time. Blames his father for this. He sees himself as fat and not very good looking. He sees himself as a bad person. He discussed some of his past sexual activities, said he had a girlfriend that he had sex with occasionally. He said, I do have a sexual preoccupation, but what teenager doesn't? He said that he often feels rage, and he turns this rage back on himself, and he has had suicidal ideations. He said one time he put the gun to his head when the police were outside waiting for him, and he pulled the trigger, but the gun jammed. And he said at that point he laughed and stated, "Someone doesn't want me to die yet." He said he has homicidal thoughts, mostly directed towards his father, but also other people. They observe that he does not have hallucinations, that he seems to have a grasp on reality. There's no cognitive deficits, normal intellectual range. All this is leading to the fact of something, so stick with me. The impression that they got was borderline personality disorder. There is sufficient convincing evidence that this psychopathy is present. He demonstrates episodes of ignoring or distortion of reality and projection defense mechanisms. He does have periods of excessively strange impulses and feelings. He has impulse management issues. It basically is saying that he's unwell, and it blows. And in the other report, same thing. Extreme and severe emotional deterioration in the future is possible. Aggressive behavior towards others in the future is very highly likely. This is all said in both of these reports. And the diagnosis is, I would rate the potential for Todd to act out in the future as being in the moderately high range. This is increased due to his distrust of others and his own exploitative personality characteristics. Multiple people evaluated him and said, yeah, there's a very good chance he can't be rehabilitated. He's going to act out in the future, etc. Which it blows my mind that, 15 years. Initially, apparently, when he was in prison, he was violent and uncooperative and got into trouble a lot. But sometime around after he turned 20, so it was prison for about 4 years at that point, his disciplinary issues seemed to decrease. While he was incarcerated, he earned a bachelor's degree in computer science from Central Arizona College. And in 2001, he was released after serving 14 years in prison. So after his release, he moved to South Carolina to be near his mother. He got a job working at a company as a graphic designer in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And he decided to continue his studies at Greenville Technical College. So he is just living in South Carolina, working, seemingly normal guy, normal life at this point. So on November 6, 2003, in Chesney, South Carolina, there was a horrific crime. 4 people were found shot to death at Superbike Motorsports, a motorcycle shop. The victims were Scott Ponder, who was 30 years old, and the owner of the shop, Brian Lucas, who was 29, the service manager, Chris Sherbert, 26, a mechanic, and Beverly Guy, 52, the bookkeeper and mother of Scott Ponder, the owner. They were all killed by multiple gunshots. Investigators initially believed that the gunmen entered from the back of the store, killed the mechanic first, then killed Beverly in the showroom. then killed the service manager at the doorway, and then killed Scott Ponder in the parking lot, apparently. Everybody was killed within a matter of minutes. Of course, knowing that, police are going through looking at their customers who's bought motorcycles here, who's brought motorcycles back into the shop to be serviced, things like that. And whose name pops up? Todd Kohlhepp's name. According to Scott Ponder, the shop owner's wife, she described Todd as a disgruntled customer who came to the shop multiple times. He bought a motorcycle there. He wanted to get his motorcycle fixed up there. And then he tried to return a motorcycle. But apparently, according to Todd's mom, the employees laughed at him. So Todd continues on. This is unsolved at this point. This Superbike Motorsports, that's what it was called. So the Superbike Motorsports shooting happens in 2003. There are, no specific suspects. It is a head scratcher a little bit that Todd was a disgruntled customer, but there was nothing necessarily at this point that pointed to him having done this. So he continues working and continuing his studies, and on March 25th, 2006, he obtained a private pilot's license. He had said when he was younger, he had always wanted to be a pilot. So he got a private pilot's license. And around this time also, he applied to take the South Carolina real estate exam, which as someone who was convicted of kidnapping and spent so much time in prison, it's odd that he was able to get his real estate license, but he was, and he opened up his own real estate firm, TKA Real Estate, which he ran out of his home in Moore, South Carolina. It was actually a pretty successful real estate firm. He had about a dozen agents, and at one point he was even recognized as a top selling agent in the region. He was continuing going to school, and in 2008, he graduated from the University of South Carolina, upstate, with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and Marketing. And in May 2014, so this whole time he's buying properties and also selling, he's running his real estate agency, but he's also buying several properties, like as investment properties or as properties to flip them. He also acquired nearly 100 acres of land, about 9 miles from Moore, South Carolina, 100 acres of land for $300,000. That was in 2014. That seems super inexpensive. I guess I've never looked at the price of land, so I don't know. And then I saw in one article, something said, and he also set up an $80,000 fence around the property, which sounds very expensive, but also 100 acres, that's a big fence. So that makes sense. I don't know why that is even necessary to know, but I thought it was an interesting little tidbit. So while he seemingly was running his own business, investing in properties, going to school, and living what from the outside would look like a very successful life, the people around him did notice some kind of abnormalities and peculiar things about him. A former client of his did describe Todd as professional and outgoing, but noted that he often talked about firearms, like too much, that it was weird, and used inappropriate innuendo. So he would make a lot of sexual jokes. Another person who worked with Todd on Todd's team of real estate agents said that he thought Todd was angry and very condescending. And another person on the team said that their biggest problem with Todd, which I agree with this, was that he would watch pornographic videos at work, like in front of other people, just full blown on the computer porn happening. And that he would often, on the firm's website, I guess there was some type of blog or something, he would often put on the firm's website that he motivated his workers by not feeding them, which is weird. All of it's weird. He was also a regular at a Waffle House in Roebuck. And So he went there multiple times a week, apparently, and made the wait staff extremely uncomfortable. The male cook eventually had to start coming out and taking Todd's orders so that the waitresses wouldn't have to, because he was so inappropriate with them. I couldn't find a lot of details on that, but I feel like our imaginations can figure it out. So even though Todd had served his 14, 15 years in prison, that time it didn't extinguish the dark impulses that were brewing inside of him. His disturbing behavior at work or at places like Waffle House hinted that those old demons were still very much alive. And soon they would erupt with devastating consequences. On August 31st, 2016, Kayla Brown, 30 years old, and her boyfriend, Charles David Carver, 32, were reported missing after they had gone to do some work on one of Todd's properties. So on this particular time, they had been hired to clear some brush from his land on his 100-acre property, I believe. But regularly, Kayla would clean the houses and clear properties for Todd before he would offer them up for rent. So, he was in real estate. She was a house cleaner. So she had been working for him on and off for several years. So Kayla's friend, Charles's mom, filed a missing person report, I believe, on August 31st for her son. And then one of Kayla's friends, Leah Miller, filed a missing person report on September 5th, saying that she hadn't heard from her friend in several days. She said that Kayla's car, a black Chevy Cobalt, was parked in front of her apartment complex. And so police went, they saw the car, they checked her apartment, and her dog Romeo was in the apartment left alone without food, but no sign of Kayla. And as they continued to be missing, some suspicion came about because there were some strange Facebook posts on Charles's Facebook page, which people saw and were like, this doesn't seem like him. There were messages indicating that Charles and Kayla had gotten married and that they were fine and people shouldn't worry about them. And the families of both Kayla and Charles were like, these are not real. Like, we haven't heard from them in weeks. There's no way they're posting on Facebook about like being married and being fine. So police, apparently it took police a long time to trace these cell phone signals, but they eventually were able to trace their last known cell phone signals, which led them to Todd's property on November 3rd. And they were kind of exploring the property when they heard banging from inside a shipping container on the property. And they opened that to find Kayla Brown chained inside of this metal shipping container where she had been held for approximately 65 days. She told police that she watched Todd shoot Charles. And I have a quote on here that feels out of place here, but Todd's mother later claimed that Todd only killed Charles because he had a smart mouth and he kept Kayla alive because he didn't want to hurt her. Kayla said that during her captivity, she was repeatedly assaulted. She was raped twice a day and threatened with death, even shown the grave sites of other victims to intimidate her into compliance. After she was rescued, she spoke to a reporter. She said, I was introduced, this is going to all be direct quotes from her. I was introduced to Todd about 5 or 6 years ago by a guy I was dating. He said they were friends. She said that she stayed in touch with Todd via Facebook and started cleaning houses for him several years ago. She said that day that they went over there, this is what she said. She said, we had walked inside and got hedge clippers and walked back outside. Todd went back inside and told us to hold on for a second. Me and Charlie were standing side by side outside the building facing the doorway, waiting for Todd to come back out. When Todd came back out, he had a gun in his hand. He fired 3 shots into Charlie's chest. Charlie fell backwards. I was completely in shock. I looked down at him. That's when Todd grabbed me from behind, took me inside, put me on the floor, and handcuffed me. He handcuffed my hands behind my back and cuffed my feet. Then he sat down in a chair and told me that he was sorry about Charlie, that he had to let me know he was serious, that he wouldn't hurt me if I did what he said, and that he couldn't believe that I didn't realize that he liked to kill people, because apparently I knew he used to do it for a living. He said he had told me that he did it for the government for a living, and I should have known better. He also told me he was breaking all of his rules with me and didn't know if he was going to kill me or sell me or what, but he just wanted to keep me for some reason. When he took me outside, I saw Charlie was wrapped up in a blue tarp in the bucket of his tractor. He put me in the building and left me there. He told me he buried Charlie somewhere out there, and that he said nobody would ever find him because he put red pepper around him, and that wouldn't allow the dogs to smell him. She said that Todd also asked for her passwords to get into Charlie's and her phones and Facebook's accounts. Todd dumped Charlie's car, spray painted it, and loaded it with dog food so animals would tear it up and not leave any evidence. She said Todd also claimed he sold people to sex trade in other countries, but I think he was just trying to scare me on that one. He said he used to kill people for the government. He said he was a military contractor and that when he got home, he just couldn't keep from seeing the bad in everybody. He said that he liked killing drug dealers and bad people. The story was, he told me about a few years back, he walked into a bike shop in Anderson and shot 4 people, and that they never found out who did it. He liked to brag that he was a serial killer and a mass murderer. He said he was going to kill more people because he had dreams of his body count being in the 3 digits, but right now it was still in the high 2 digits. He would get to the shipping container every day between 1 and 3 o'clock, take me up to the main building, feed me, make me do whatever he wanted sexually, and then he would put me back in the building. He would always come back between 5 and 7 p.m., take me up to the building, feed me again most of the time, get whatever out of me he wanted sexually again, and then he would let me take a bath. I had a chain around my neck connected to the wall and a cuff around my ankle. When he would come get me, he would come in with a gun. He would sit the gun down before he got within reach of me, and he would then walk me to the other building at gunpoint. It took me weeks and weeks to convince him not to walk me around in ankle cuffs because they hurt my ankles. He said he would never see jail time. He would either buy his way out or his handlers would get him out. He said that if he was ever caught, that he would say, "I shot Charlie," that I had seduced him and made him think I wanted to get away from Charlie. He said that he had money and that they would believe him first, and he was going to put it all on me. He liked to tell me over and over that he would never be in trouble for this. He would make sure it's my fault somehow. He actually made me handle several of his guns. I know I had my hands on at least 2 of his pistols. The person she was talking to said, "Were they loaded?" And she said, "No, he always dropped the mag and cleared the chamber before he handed it to me. He said he was going to teach me to be like him. He wanted me to kill people." The person she was talking to said, "It's okay to cry. You've been through hell." And she said, "Yeah, but I get to live through it. The rest didn't." Eventually, I told him I hated him. And he said, "Oh, but I take care of you, protecting you from the world." At a certain point, I refused to do anything he wanted. If I said no, he didn't force himself on me. But he made it very well known why I was there, and if I wasn't useful, that I wouldn't need to be kept any longer and that he would shoot me. But it would have been easier if he had shot me. They later found Charlie's body on the property, and Todd was arrested soon after Kayla was rescued. His real estate firm was later shut down, and he confessed. I read that he confessed, and then I also read some accounts that say that he was just he implicated himself in the Superbike motorsports murders. Either way, he said he admitted whether he implicated himself or fully confessed to the Superbike motorsports murders. He also Charlie's murder and 2 additional murders. He said that there were 2 additional bodies buried on his property. So police went to the property and did discover 2 additional bodies. Johnny Joe Coxey, who was 29, and his wife Megan Lee McGraw Coxey, 26. They had been missing since December 2015. Had also apparently been hired by Todd to help work on his property. And Megan was also a waitress at the Waffle House that he frequented. The coroner determined that Johnny was killed by a gunshot to the torso, while Megan was kept alive for 6 days and then shot in the head on Christmas Day. So in exchange for cooperating, apparently Todd had asked to have some time to speak to his mother, to give her a photograph, and to transfer money to a college fund for a friend's child. And during this meeting with his mother that he was given, he admitted openly to the murders and the kidnapping. He revealed specific details to his mother about the Superbike shootings that were not released to the public, so they knew that he was the guy. At a certain point when he was talking to his mom had said, how many victims are there in total? And he told her, you do not have enough fingers. He also claimed to have committed a murder in Arizona. So Tempe police went back and were looking through unsolved homicides for the years that he was living in Arizona, 1983 to 1986, and then late 2001 after he got out of prison. But they weren't able to, at least as of now, find anything to link to him. Once they searched his property, there was an extensive collection of firearms, 9mm pistols with silencers, semi-automatic rifles, and a large quantity of ammunition. There was no records indicating that these were purchased legally. So they believed he had purchased these guns illegally, which would make sense since he was a convicted felon, I assume. That's a felony kidnapping. Also, after his arrest, authorities discovered some chilling product reviews on Amazon under the username Me, which was linked to his account. It was linked to this username Me, and this Amazon account was linked to a wish list that was under his name. So the items that he reviewed were pretty wide ranging. There was everything from season 6 of The Walking Dead to a pet feeder, master padlocks, tactical vests, shovels, tasers, gun accessories, and dozens of other products that were all reviewed between 2014 and 2016. And this is why he is dubbed the Amazon review killer. And these are just so disturbing. So one padlock review stated, solid locks. I have 5 on a shipping container. Won't stop them, but sure will slow them down till they are too old to care. Another review for a folding shovel said, keep in car for when you have to hide the bodies and you left the full-size shovel at home. Does not come with a midget, which would have been nice. A knife, the review said, haven't stabbed anyone yet. When I do, it will be with a quality tool like this. And then a chainsaw, it says, works excellent. Getting the neighbor to stand still while you chase him with it is hard enough without having an easy-to-use chainsaw. So, if he hadn't have murdered people, maybe these would be seen by some people with a dark sense of humor as funny, sarcastic, but in light of his, the many bodies found, several bodies found on his property, these were super disturbing. They were trying to link because he had been so straightforward in telling his mom and then also telling investigators eventually, there are way more people. You haven't found everybody that I've killed. They were continually trying to find other murders that he could have been linked to. They named him as a person of interest in an unsolved 2003 triple homicide and bank robbery at Blue Ridge Savings Bank, because that was just 6 months after the Superbike murders. So for whatever reason, they thought he denied involvement in that, and they weren't able to form a conclusive link. And there really were no other murders that he became even a person of interest in. In December 2017, he wrote a letter to the Spartanburg Herald Journal claiming that there were many more undiscovered victims. At the time, he was 46, and he said he had tried to tell investigators about his other victims, but they blew him off. This letter that he wrote was an 8-page letter. He said, "There is way more than 7. I tried to tell investigators, and I did tell FBI, but it was blown off. It's not an addition problem. It's a multiplication problem. Leaves the state and leaves the country. Thank you, private pilot's license." So he faced 4 counts of murder for the Superbike Motorsports shootings, 1 count of kidnapping related to Kayla Brown's abduction. Additional charges included 3 counts of murder for the killings of Charles Carver, Johnny and Megan Coxey, another count of kidnapping, and 3 counts of possessing a weapon during a violent crime. There were also, the families of the Superbike Motorsports victims and Kayla Brown, they all filed wrongful death and civil suits against him. And on May 26, 2017, he pled guilty to 7 counts of murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of criminal sexual assault. He was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, avoiding the death penalty as part of a plea agreement. He's currently serving his sentence at Broad River Correctional Institution. And just within like a year of going into prison, in 2018, he apparently had been housed in protective custody for nearly a year, but he nonetheless, even though he was in protective custody, he claimed that he'd been mistreated at the hands of the prison system. This is according to a federal lawsuit filed in February 2018 against the South Carolina Departments of Corrections officials. Apparently, there were 24 inmates, including Todd Kohlhepp, on this lawsuit, saying that they had been mistreated while housed within protective custody unit. It claimed that their civil rights while in protective custody were violated and that they had been subject to harassment, discrimination, and denied privileges and mental health treatment. And yes, I'm saying that with a lot of disdain in my voice because I don't know about the other prisoners who were on this lawsuit, but Todd Kohlhepp murdered in cold blood multiple people, kept a woman chained up and raped her countless times, kidnapped and raped a 14-year-old girl. Like, this man denied privileges. You were subject to harassment. Boo-hoo. Fuck you. You should be subject to harassment. I mean, I know an eye for an eye and all that shit. I get it. But to me, this man I have so many thoughts. He's an evil person. I think that he, unfortunately, maybe it's because of his somewhat tumultuous childhood, but I mean, it wasn't, I don't mean to make light of it. Being abused is not something that's a joke or to be taken lightly, but I really take issue with, like, my dad beat me up a little bit as a kid and my parents got divorced and now I'm a murderer. And that's why. No, I'm sorry. No. Plenty of people, unfortunately, suffer from abuse of some kind when they're kids or children, or their parents, discipline them in maybe a more physical way than is considered appropriate today. And not all of those people grow up to be murderers at all. So, and then you're going to whine. You're in protective custody, but you're subject to harassment or discrimination of what? You're a white man. What are you being discriminated about? And then being denied privileges, again, this is a selfish point of view, but like being denied privileges of mental health treatment, like, really? Do you know how many people aren't in prison and haven't committed murder that need mental health treatment and can't afford it, don't have health insurance, aren't able to, like, are working so much that they don't have time to get mental health treatment? It isn't available to them. All the many, many reasons. And like, you're in prison for literally murder and rape over many, many years. And you're going to sue the Department of Corrections for not giving you mental health treatment. Fuck off is what I say to that. And the families of most of his victims felt similarly. They told the Herald Journal that Todd should receive no special treatment and should serve his time in general population. Apparently, he was eventually transferred to Gen Pop, but Todd, and the other inmates were complaining in the lawsuit that the protective unit had denied them the ability to participate in activities available to other inmates, like drug treatment and educational opportunities. They are asking for a jury trial, and each are seeking $375,000 in compensatory damages. It's laughable. If I wasn't so disgusted, I would laugh. Like, are you joking? But they did get transferred back to Gen Pop, so presumably they're allowed to participate now in drug treatments and educational opportunities. And also, I'm sorry, like, I understand that our prison system is fraught with issues, and there are innocent people who are imprisoned, and there are people in prison for selling pot or things like, weed, whatever. And like, weed's essentially legal now. I mean, I understand there's so many issues, but for someone like this, it's a very, very open and shut. He's a murderer. First of all, how did you let him get out of prison when his psychiatric evaluations, literally all of them said he will very likely, cause harm to other people in the future. He is probably not able to be rehabilitated, which obviously he's not. And the fact that he got out of prison, moved to South Carolina, and seemingly no one was keeping tabs on this man because he got a pilot's license, he got a real estate license, he owned multiple properties. Like, where's his parole officer? Where is the kind of follow-up on this? It seemed, and I know that there's too many bad people and not enough, people to monitor them. I don't have the answers. I obviously have no answers for this. It feels like a very depressing cycle looking at our prison system and all of that. But what a joke. $375,000 a piece because you were denied certain privileges or subject to harassment. You raped people, dude. Shut up. That's how I feel. Sorry, I don't know why I got so riled up about that. And then the last thing that I saw, in 2020, some of his personal belongings were auctioned off and the proceeds were donated to the victims' families, which is so crazy to me. Like, I mean, I guess that's making like lemonade out of lemons. Like, the fact that people want to buy his personal items. And maybe I don't have room to judge because here I am telling his story. And I mean, I'm not trying to, what's the word I'm looking for, guys? I'm not trying to glamorize it. That's not the word, but essentially that. Like, I'm not trying to make it seem like, oh, it's so cool and amazing. I know that a lot of people feel that's what true crime podcasts do. No, this man is a sicko. I think borderline personality disorder. I think psychopath for sure. Anyways, it's great that the families were able to get some money because I'm sure they didn't get jack shit from their civil suits against him. But the fact that there are people out there who are like bidding on his what? I don't know. There was no list of the items. So I don't know his books, his underwear, like, ugh, God. And then the final thing, and this needs more research, but hold on. I know this is unprofessional. Okay. So I found on Amazon a book titled SK 101. Oh, I get it. Serial Killer 101, a dark humor guide to becoming a serial killer, written by Todd Kohlhepp, as told to Tammy Underwood. The description says, and this looks, like a self-published, sorry for that, a self-published, there's 5 ratings, it's $10 for the paperback version. It was published about a year ago, October 27th, 2023, 64 pages long. It's described as this. This guide was not written as any how-to manual, but as a rather smart-ass attempt at dark humor. It was written to make you laugh inappropriately, realize the world really is a stranger place than you thought, and maybe make you question if you could actually carry out that dark thought in the back of your mind, but leave it there per attorney-recommended statement. Wink, wink. After meeting a mean mother-in-law, that real piece of work that your daughter says she's in love with, or your boss who passed you over for that promotion you worked so hard for, that ends up going to his idiot nephew who barely shows up other than to harass the secretary. So first of all, that's the longest run-on sentence ever, but I believe what he intended to mean by that is, could you carry out that dark thought in the back of your mind after meeting a mean mother-in-law, the person your daughter loves, whatever. But then he says, wink, wink. I mean, this just like, it makes my stomach curl. And who is this Tammy Underwood? And why? Why would she do this? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. I guess I could read more about Tammy. On the back of the book, it says, Tammy Underwood is currently living in the Pacific Northwest and co-hosts the true crime podcast Brutal Nation. She's the proud mother of her adult son, Jeremiah, and an adult adopted daughter, Leah, with 2 young boys who call her Gigi because she is too young and pretty to be called grandma. Weirdest author bio I've ever read. Yeah. Oh, so the rest of the description on the back of the book I see now, it says, just imagine how much extra work your boss used to place on your desk that now ends up on the next person's when you leave this guide lying around. How much more space you suddenly discover while reading this on the subway, bus, or plane. Smile when your lunch suddenly becomes the one that never gets stolen from the break room. So think of this guide as an investment. So I'm fairly certain that he did tell whoever Tammy Underwood is about this, and she wrote it for him and self-published it. So I don't know if that's like his prison girlfriend or what, but now I'm super intrigued to find out. I mean, I Googled, I couldn't find anything. Somebody wrote a review that says, to die for, an absolute killer book. It'll really knock you dead. Mr. Kohlhepp is full of cold as steel insight. The excitement is almost too hard to contain. He'll leave you dying for more. Jesus. I mean, do these people know that he's actually a convicted murderer, rapist, kidnapper? I guess people like that stuff. I mean, again, here I am doing a podcast. Yeah. So there is the story of a very disturbed Todd Kohlhepp. And I can't remember how I came across this, but I came across it last night, bleary-eyed, not being able to sleep. I have this terrible cough. I already talked about this, but I took more cough medicine today. Not quite as much as the other day. So it's seemingly better, but man, I'm struggling. It might just be the season change and all the fires I've been having. I don't know, but I really expected to quit smoking my vape nicotine thing and have so much better breathing, and that's just not turning out to be the case. Anyways, I want to hear your feedback from maybe not the blabbering on that I did yesterday, but I'd love to hear your feedback and any questions for our lovely friend in Belgium who I played her audio messages. And don't forget to send me your audio messages if you have something, because again, I'm happy to not blab about myself, but I need something else to blab about. So I'd love to blab about you guys or play your messages. So just, think of an interesting story that you have and send it in a voicemail or many multiple Instagram audio messages, because it only lets you record for a minute at a time. You can leave a voicemail at 520-302-5253. Email us at deathxsouthwest@gmail.com. You can go to the website and send us a message, which is deathxsouthwest.com. And that's it, guys. I appreciate all the feedback. And I will be back. I know this week was like all over the place with 2 bonus episodes of apparently just blathering nothing. And now finally true crime. So I'm going to try and be back on schedule next week. But again, who knows? There's always something new and different here. But I think the most interesting is when I get to talk about you guys. So yes, please send me voicemails, emails, tell me your thoughts, anything you want to send. I love to hear from you, and I love you all very much, even you, Mary in Montana. And talk to you guys soon. Okay, bye.
Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, "Good night and good luck."